Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Yeshiva Pirkei Shoshanim in League with Nativ. My name is Davon Mays,
And I'm Dieho Boko.
and we are doing the Bnei Noach class for Africa. And today we're going to be dealing with one of the 7 laws, Ever Men Hakai, basically speaking about eating the limb of a living animal and some other dietary laws. So we're going to get right into it. I'm going to share a screen. And this is the Noahide laws from the Yeshiva Pirkei Shoshanim Shulchan Aruch Project, lesson 49. Tio, you jump in at any time you want. Give some commentary if you like. And here we go.
So,
Introduction. Animals, be they insects, mammals, birds, or slugs, are man's constant companions on this planet. They were created before man, yet are clearly subservient to him, as the Torah tells us. The fear and dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, every fowl of the air, and upon all that all that teems on the ground, and all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. As the green herb I have given you all. Despite the subservient position of animals, man's relationship to them is not without boundaries. Man cannot do to them whatever he pleases. In this and the following lesson, we will explore the Torah's expectations for man's relationship with his fellow creations. The source of Sar Balei Kaim, the prohibition of causing pain to living things. The Torah prohibits causing the suffering of any living creature without valid necessity. Valid necessity will be defined later in this lesson. Though the Talmud states that the prohibition is biblical, there are variant traditions as to its exact source. For Noahides, making such a determination is important for knowing whether or not the law applies to them. The Gedolim, great Torah teachers, have proposed a number of possible sources. Ritva and Rabbeinu Peretz explains the prohibition as a halakha le Moshe Sinai, a precept communicated directly by God to Moses without explicit textual source in the Torah. However, it only tells us that Jews were commanded via halakha le Moshe Sinai and implies nothing about Noahides. Shita, Mukubetsis, and Ravad offer Deuteronomy 25:4 as a source for the prohibition against cruelty to animals. You shall not muzzle an ox while he is treading out grain. Muzzling an ox during threshing, thus preventing him from feeding as necessary, is cruel. This verse does not come to teach only this specific prohibition, but a broader prohibition against cruelty to animals. However, this verse was only communicated to Jews and not to Noahides. According to Rashi, the prohibition is from Exodus 23:5. If you see your enemy's donkey lying under its burden, would you refrain from helping him? You shall surely help along with him. Regardless of one's relationship to the donkey's owner, Rashi holds that one must relieve the donkey of its suffering. However, this verse, as Deuteronomy 25:4 above, was never commanded to Noahides. Therefore, it does not tell us anything about Noahide obligations. Part of an Ever Menakai. Maimonides and Nachmanides write that an underlying purpose of the prohibition of Ever Menakai, flesh taken from a living animal, is to prevent causing cruelty to animals. Such an interpretation means that the prohibition of causing suffering to animals is intrinsically part of the Noahide code. Maimonides further cites the incident of Balaam and his donkey as proof of the prohibition's inclusion in the Noahide laws. The she-donkey saw the angel of the Lord, and it crouched down under Balaam. Balaam's anger flared, and he beat the she-donkey with the stick. The Lord opened the mouth of the she-donkey, and she said to Balaam, What have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? Balaam said to the she donkey, for you have humiliated me. If I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now. The she donkey said to Balaam, am I not your she donkey on which you have ridden since you first started until now? Have I been accustomed to do this to you? He said. No. The Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with the sword drawn in his hand. He bowed and prostrated himself on his face. The angel of the Lord said to him, why have you beaten your she donkey these 3 times? The Sefer Hasidim also understands the story of Balaam as referring to the prohibition of Sar Bali Cain. However, the Sefer Hasidim offers a fascinating insight into the mitzvah. A person is punished for any actions that causes suffering to his fellow. This is even if one causes needless suffering to an animal. For example, if one places upon it a burden so heavy that the animal cannot walk, and he then hits it, then in the future, such a person will have to give an accounting for this. For causing suffering to animals is a biblical prohibition, as it is written by Balaam. Why did you strike your donkey? As punishments often correspond to the crime. Because Balaam said, if there were a sword in my hand, I will kill you right now. He was himself killed by the sword. See Joshua 13:22. The warning is learned from the fact that Noahides were not commanded in dominion. Adam, who was not allowed to eat meat, was given dominion over the animals. However, Noah, who was given permission to eat meat, was not given dominion. I think that's pretty distinct proof right there. Anything you want to add?
Yes, I'm struggling to get this thing, but anyway, I read something that is very interesting that I was not aware of actually, and that is they say God never gave Adam permission to kill any animal. However, he was allowed to eat meat of an animal that just died by itself. But in terms of him going ahead and killing, he was not permitted. Only Noah was permitted to kill and eat. So I found that interesting, you know. It's something that I believe if you go to the Bible, it might be difficult for you to get, but I think with extra biblical sources, that's where they came up with this.
Interesting, and it's like you really have to think about that situation. And Noah was not given dominion over the animals, but he was given permission to eat. Adam was given dominion, not permission to eat. Very interesting. Elucidating the Sefer Hasidim. The Sefer Hasidim connects the prohibition against cruelty to animals to the permission given to Noah to eat meat and to the blessings given to Noah and Adam. At first glance, the Sefer Hasidim's intent is a little unclear. Let us start by comparing the blessings given to Adam and to Noah. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that creeps upon the earth. Compare the language of this blessing very carefully to that of the blessing given to Noah. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth and upon every fowl of the air and upon all that teems upon the ground and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. The Midrash notes a significant change in language in these 2 passages. Fear and dread returned after the flood, but not dominion. In the blessing to Adam, God granted man dominion over all other life on earth. God's blessing to Noah is virtually identical, except that God did not grant Noah dominion. Rather, he only instilled the fear of man upon the other creatures of the world. In God's original version of creation, man was given the world for domination as a king rules over his dominion. In this state, Adam's task was to preserve the order and well being of the world created for him. His power over the lesser creatures was intrinsic. Adam was given dominion. It appears that as a king, Adam was not permitted to eat meat. Doing so would be to eat his own subjects. However, this divine vision was corrupted beyond all measure. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupted, for all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. Man debased himself and lost his position as a ruler. In the blessing to Noah, we see that man's inherent dominion was replaced with fear and dread. As we see from the above cited Midrash and its commentaries, that before the flood, man was feared because of his inherent dominion. After the flood, God placed the fear of man upon the animals because man lost his dominion. At this point, man was, for lack of a better way of putting it, only the top of the food chain and not a ruler. Therefore, man could eat animals. However, unlike a ruler, man was not allowed to do with the animals as he saw fit. Eating meat and the prohibition of causing suffering are both, therefore, signs of man's debasement and lower position following the flood. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, so maybe just to clarify something that we started with, and that is usually when you read from the Jewish sources, they will always say, do not eat the limb of a living animal. Even though in Hebrew it's put in that way, it doesn't mean only limbs, but any part of the body of the animal, it's not allowed to be eaten while the animal is still alive. So
Yeah.
just to bring that clarity. And I think that also on our study guides here, if you look down, the verses that we are reading are actually recorded down there. You might just read a verse without actually telling you that the verse is what. But if you look at the verse that we read, it will show you in small letters, in small writings there, whether it's 13, 14. If it says 13, it means it's Genesis 6:12, because if you look down there, 13 is Genesis 12, 6:12. So maybe, Dave, let me just read also again Genesis 9:4, where our study is actually based, so that we don't lose our listeners. So 9:4 says, you must not, however, eat flesh with its live blood in it. So which means our study today is basically based on that Genesis chapter 9:4. And we are just expounding more on that verse.
Excellent.
And in South Africa, in Africa, actually, we have a serious problem of people are killing animals just to get certain parts of that animal, right? And it has been a serious problem. And we see that if people learn more about Noahide laws, they will see that these are serious problems that they're causing. It's a serious breaking of the law, not of the country, but of the law of God. And so I think this is very important for people, especially because we have got many animals here. And so people are not treating those animals in a good way.
And that's like referring to like poachers, right?
Yes.
A lot of poaching, yeah. Unfortunately, that's been a problem for years and all over the place. Not only in Africa, but in many places in the world where there's wild animals.
Sure.
People poach, and there's laws and refugee zoos and camps and stuff like that, and not necessarily camps, but land designated just for those animals to be left alone.
Yes. Yes.
Are
And
Noahides I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead. I will.
Are Noahides permitted from causing other creatures pain? If the source of Sar Bali Kaim is Halakha le Moshe Misinai, a command given directly to Moses, or from Deuteronomy 25:4 or Exodus 23:5, then it is clear that the prohibition does not apply to Noahides. This is because the verse cited, as well as Halakas le Moshe Misinai, were not commanded to Noahides. The Ashel, Avraham, Buksaks, and the pre-Megiddo whole Bnei Noach are not obligated in Zar Beli Chaim based on these sources. According to Maimonides in the Sefer Hasidim, however, Noahides are biblically enjoined against causing unnecessary suffering to other living beings. Upon closer examination, it appears these sources are not mutually exclusive. Although the Ashel, Abraham, and Pre Magadim hold that Noahides are not obligated to Sar Bali Kaim, that this appears only to be in regard to the Torah verses related to the commandment. After all, these verses explicitly reference the Jewish Sinaitic obligation.
Yeah, just to say something also there.
Sure.
Sorry. And if we look here, if God is so particular about animals that we should not cause pain to animals, what more about a man? You know, indirectly, what we are discussing today still touches to some extent to mankind. If we are prohibited from causing pain to animals, what more to human beings? And when it comes to human beings, it's actually even more, because it's not about physical pain that you are prohibited from causing, but also lashon hara, where you cause pain through your speech.
That's a great point, because verbal abuse can be just as painful as physical abuse. Verbal abuse can lead people to commit suicide. And like you said, it just causes us steamrolls a bunch of other problems. Proverbs chapter 6, when God said he hates gossip, that is cruelty. I mean, that's causing people pain and suffering through your mouth, literally. So yeah, that's an excellent point. Dennis, you want to say anything? No? Okay. Nevertheless, the Ashel, Abraham, and Pre Magadim would certainly agree that, independent of the Torah verses, Noahides have an obligation not to cause harm to other creatures. Admittedly, there are a number of subtle issues inherent in Maimonides and the Sefer Chasidim's derivations. We will discuss these issues in the live class. Regardless of these issues, there are many other reasons to assume Noahides are prohibited from causing suffering to animals, namely on account of it being of the mitzvos how muskalos, the logically compelled mitzvos. In practice, because the prohibition may be biblical in nature as opposed to being logically compelled, it is advisable that Noahides practice the obligations according to their full exposition in Torah law. The following is a compilation of the laws of Zar Bali Kaim. To which animals does it apply? The prohibition applies to all animals and apparently insects as well. When does the prohibition not apply? Causing pain to animals is only restricted to unnecessary pain. Man was given the right to use animals for his needs, food, clothing, etc. Discomfort that is necessary as part of such use is not prohibited. The need must be genuine and tangible. For example, to force feed an animal so that so that its meat should look more appealing is not acceptable. And we know people do this with certain types of ducks and geese and things like that. They stuff the birds and it does something with the liver. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but people will definitely overfeed certain animals to fatten them up, for lack of a better term. And this is just cruel. Um, Even when one is permitted to harm an animal for a valid need, he may not cause more suffering than is necessary. Medical experimentation on animals for the benefit of human health is permitted. In such cases, though it is praiseworthy to do so, there may not be an actual requirement to endeavor to lessen the suffering of the animals involved. Cosmetic testing on animals are permitted according to most poskim. Others have expressed reservations. However, this issue will be discussed more in the live class. Castration or sterilization of an animal for the benefit of its owner is considered a valid need and is permitted. Similarly, I don't know why I'm struggling with this word. Similarly, declawing a cat is permitted under certain conditions. This will be discussed in the live class. Human financial need is also a valid waiver for the prohibition of Zar Bali Kaim, your animal versus that of another. One may feed other another animal to his dog or other pet. Since he owns the pet, he is responsible for its welfare. However, one should kill the food one should kill the food animal first as to minimize its suffering. You just don't, you know, well, it's kind of weird because if you have a snake, I'm not sure you can throw a dead rat to a snake. I think the rat or the mouse must be alive. So that one might be a little tricky. I know many people who've had snakes growing up, and I've never seen them give them dead rats or mice. It's always something that's alive, so the snake can actually hunt it. So that might be something different. Go ahead, Dennis. You're muted.
Y'all may have covered this before, I'm not sure. But when you were discussing the whole thing about the soul, that just brought to my mind, in Genesis, when God, Hashem, breathed the soul into man and all mankind. I mean, is not the issue of the concern that Hashem has for animals the fact that he breathed a soul into them also? Or does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, he created them, and he doesn't want them to just be needlessly,
No, what I mean is
tortured.
that they're part of his creation, and he has a concern. I don't understand exactly how, but he has a concern for their well-being and man's well-being. But man is obviously the center of it, and he's given man dominion over all the animals. I guess, and I was reading the other day that even plants have a soul.
They actually give off a response to
I'm just saying
pain,
that there's more to
scientifically.
there's more to creation, I think, than we even have even a beginning understanding of.
Well, they're alive. I mean, anything that grows is alive.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
know.
alive. So, however we
just had
want to look at that, yeah.
I just had never thought about the whole idea of a soul. They don't have a spirit, but they do have a soul.
Yeah.
And
If we look at our lesson for yesterday, you will see that not yesterday, last week, there are three components that we spoke about there. And so my understanding is the animals will have the lowest level of the soul, that is, I think it's nefesh.
right.
Yeah, so even like the plants, they will have the lowest, the nefesh.
Yeah, I think it's a good point because we as people we tend, a lot of people, not everybody, but people tend to look down on animals just because we have that sort of domination over them, but they have families too.
Yeah,
They have families, they raise their kids. I mean, they have the same type of structures we do. Not all animals, of course, insects and the other things have they go about it a different way, but you know have you ever seen a cow or deer trying to defend its baby from the leopard? You know what I mean? Like they have feelings. You know what I mean? You can tell, and then after they kill the baby or whatever, another animal kills a baby, they'll come over and sniff it and like lick on it. Like there's a connection there. So even though we don't understand how they view such things, they're not just mindless creatures. You know what I'm saying? They have something going on to where they instinctively want to protect their babies. A mother bear will fight you tooth and claw, you know what I'm saying, to protect her baby. So they're not, even though they're animals in our eyes, they're not just animals. You know what I'm saying? That is another life, that is another creation that
Well, they have
Hashem made,
yeah.
and we got to respect that.
They have a purpose. They have a purpose in life.
Yes, another actually sub-command of this command that we are busy discussing, I think I've read somewhere in the books where they say you're not allowed to eat a bird and it's what do you call the eggs. You know, if you want to even to take the eggs of a bird, you need to chase it away first. Not while it's still there, and you just take the eggs. You know, it's cruel. You're not allowed to do something like that. You need to chase it away. Then you can take the eggs. A chicken, you cannot just come and just take the eggs of it, the eggs while it's still there. Chase it away, and then you can take the eggs.
Right. So
And
she
another
doesn't
thing
like
that-
see it.
Exactly. So another thing that I remember one rabbi was saying is, if you own a dog and you come back from work, right, and you're hungry, and your dog is hungry as well, you need to prepare food for your dog before yourself, or even sometimes before your children, because you see, a human being, because of a neshama, we are given more than just what these animals have been given. We have understanding that I don't have, the food is not in front of me now, but the food is coming. But an animal, a dog will not be able to make that, you know, be able to say, there's no food now, but the owner is making food. So because you are able to understand, you need to give food to your dog first, because it doesn't understand that if you wait for 2 minutes, the food will be there. You understand, and therefore start with an animal, and then you can prepare food for yourself after that.
Yeah. And they don't have a way to just go in the refrigerator and get food whenever they want. They're completely dependent upon you. Yeah, that's a good point. In the morning, even though their food will be coming out, I have an automatic dispenser for my cats. Before that dispenser dispenses the food, they'll come and one of them will literally come and put his paw on me. He'll just come and put his paw on my leg, like, "Hey, what's going on?" You know what I mean? So I'll actually feed them if I'm up before the dispenser dispenses. It's just because if I don't, they'll follow me around and like, "Hey, if you up, I've been up. So where's my food?" So yeah, completely understand that. And there's a verse in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 10 says, "A righteous man regards the life of his animal, but the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel." So there's even a verse in Proverbs that you don't just treat animals any old kind of way, you know. And many people, I live in Colorado, it's a real serious animal state. And like we have these certain birds, the geese, they'll come to the parks and stuff, and if people like hit those birds or something, like it's a big problem. You know what I mean? They're crossing the street and backing up traffic and everything. You know what I mean? And you know, the animals out here have a lot of protections. So you know, completely understand that. Um, your animal versus that of another. Or where was I at? Where was I at? I think I stopped at
You
I'll
had
do 8
already
again.
read 10, so you
I was
need
at
to
10.
go
Okay.
now.
Your animal versus that
Already
of
read
another.
that one.
One may feed another. Oh, I did that. I did that 2 minutes.
Yeah.
You got to kill the animal. So talking about snakes. Okay. One may not kill an animal to feed it to another's dog or an ownerless animal. One has an obligation to feed and care for his own animal. Denying the animal food or care is considered cruel. However, Noahides have no obligation to provide food for other animals. It is certainly praiseworthy to alleviate the hunger of a starving animal, though. Feeding the squirrels, you know, feeding the birds, having a bird feeder in your backyard. You know what I mean? You got some bread, some extra bread, give it to the squirrels. You know what I mean? I got squirrels that sit on my fence and look in my window like, "Yo, yesterday he gave me some food. Is she gonna give me something today?" So I completely understand that. Relieving the suffering of an animal and mercy killing. One is only prohibited from
Sorry,
causing unnecessary suffering to an animal. One has no
okay.
obligation to alleviate an animal's existing suffering. Did you say something?
Yeah, can I just add something before
Sure.
you come? Yeah. So when it comes to also feeding animals and taking care of animals, right? Human life still comes first. You know, you always have to think about the poor, those who cannot afford, who go to bed hungry. Those should be in our minds, in our hearts, as number one. Then taking care of animals will come second, but looking after the human life comes first.
Yeah, and this is why stockout is important. For those who don't know, stockout is basically charity, and if you're going to be giving charity to animals, you definitely should be looking out for people first. You know what I mean? As far as being at the top of the food chain, I'm sure you got not everybody has the same situations, but brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, whoever, any people on the street, you see them, hungry, you can definitely take care of that person instead of only focusing on stray animals for what I mean, because they will both need things, but of course the person will come first. um One has an obligation to feed and care for his own animal. Denying the animal food or care is considered cruel. However, Noahides have no obligation to provide food for other animals. It is certainly praiseworthy to alleviate the hungry of a starving animal, though. Relieving the suffering of an animal and mercy killing. One is prohibited from causing unnecessary suffering to an animal. One has no obligation to alleviate an animal's existing suffering. Euthanasia of suffering animals is a much discussed topic in Torah literature. It hinges on this question. It is the act is the act itself of killing an animal considered Sar Beli Kaim. Some hold that the act of killing is always Sar Beli Kaim, while others hold that it is not. Furthermore, the act of ending the animal's life must be viewed in terms of benefit to the owner versus benefit to the animal. This issue must be determined on a case by case basis. And this will take us back to Deuteronomy 17. If you have a discussion that is very difficult, you go to the judges in those days. You go to the rabbis, you go to the authorities to find out the halakha. Dangerous animals and pets. Animals
Let me,
that pester.
sorry,
Go ahead.
again, Devia. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go again on what we just already discussed on top there. And in South Africa, I'm not sure in America, but we have sometimes problems where it's winter, right? And you have got someone who is the employer who is driving somewhere with his employees, and he has got a dog or whatever. He will rather put a dog in front and then he's using a bikie, right? And he puts people at the back and he puts an animal in front. And people are freezing at the back while he's protecting an animal. So I think it's something that also we need to think about, always think about people. If there is a need, leave the dog, take people wherever they need to be and come back. Than to put people at the back of your bikie and it's like -9. It's cold, right? -9 degrees Celsius and people are freezing. We see these things. You are driving to work and people are freezing at the back of a car. And there is why? That person cannot be in front because there's an animal sitting there.
Wow. It's interesting. Yes, some people don't really think things out, I'm sure everybody knows somebody who has a pet that is treated like better than a human. You see famous stars buy their dogs their own house. Things of this nature. It's like what? So yeah, some people would definitely put the animal's life over people, unfortunately. Dangerous animals and pests. Animals that pester, sting, or annoy humans may be killed even if they will suffer in the process. This includes insects, dangerous dogs, or other pets and vermin. For instance, people get their house sprayed for spiders and insects and ants and stuff like that. Because they can destroy, termites can destroy your house. Spiders can bite and, cause a lot of problems. I know a person who got bitten by a spider, his whole arm swole up. You know what I mean? Then there goes your partner saw if you're working. You know what I mean? So certain things have to be taken care of, and unfortunately, now just to be going around killing animals for the sake of doing it, that's not permitted at all. So we know people who torture animals needlessly often have signs of growing up to be like serial killers and stuff like that. They always look into their background and they'll say this person was known for, just killing cats and dogs and torturing animals as a kid. So when you see people doing that, it just kind of gives you a insight into their psyche, their mind state. Nevertheless, It is better that they be killed in a passive manner, traps, etc., so that a person does not become accustomed to killing and taking life. So yeah, there's a way to do it. You don't just randomly kill the animals. You set up traps and things like this. You don't just go around shooting at you know mice and things like that. You can definitely set traps for them. Labor animals. Labor animals may be struck or prodded as minimally necessary to direct their labor. This is considered necessary for human benefit. Hunting. Hunting, unless an actual necessity for food or hide, is considered a cruel endeavor and should not be done. The only people described as hunters in the Torah are cruel people such as Nimrod and Asaph. Capturing animals for human profit is certainly permitted. Zoos, therefore, pose no issue as long as the animals are properly cared for. So that's pretty much the lesson on that. Anybody want to elaborate on anything else?
Maybe let me add one more thing on my side, and that is there is another provision that we didn't touch today, but is the provision of mating two different species of animals, two different animals, that is not allowed as well. And when my high school years, I was doing agriculture, we used to actually do that. We were taught how to do all these things, castration and all those things. And so today we have learned that those things are not allowed.
Good point. And actually, there's another lesson. Lesson 50 actually covers the mixing of species, which is what you're talking about. And there's a lot of dogs that are bred like that. That a lot of species were created by people taking certain breeds and creating certain other breeds for specific needs. You know what I mean? So, I'm sure there's other species that are, that is known that's known to take place. But for some reason, people have done that with dogs extensively. There's a lot of that going on with dogs for certain reason, for hunting purposes, for hunting specific animals. You know what I mean? So yeah. The mixing of like when in the Torah says you can't mix seeds, you know what I mean? So some people have done that to create different species of plants and things of that nature too. Dennis, did you raise your hand? No? Okay. Well, 1 second. Well, with that being said, that's today's class covering cruelty to animals, Ever Menakai. And we will see you guys next week. And let's Tio, if you got anything else to say, I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
All right. Shalom.